Let's talk about a movie that basically everyone loves, right? E.T., the Extra-Terrestrial. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain and get the inside story, straight from the people who actually made it. We'll explore how this deeply personal and honestly kind of painful story for its director became this global phenomenon that brought the whole world together.
You know, Steven Spielberg himself has said, "To this day, I think it remains my most personal film." And that quote really gets to the heart of it all. I mean, yeah, there's an alien and there's a spaceship, but that's not what the movie is about. It's a story about feeling lonely, about family, and about finding a real friend in the absolute last place you'd ever think to look.
Okay, so let's get into it. A director's most personal film. This is the story behind the story. So where did all that powerful emotion really come from? Well, it wasn't just cooked up in some Hollywood writer's room. Nope, this came directly from Spielberg's own childhood.
The whole idea for E.T. actually came from a pretty painful place. Spielberg's parents were going through a divorce, and as a kid trying to deal with that, he basically invented an imaginary friend to fill that void, an alien friend, someone who understood what it felt like to be lost and alone. And get this, the characters of Elliot, Michael, and Gertie, they were all basically versions of Spielberg and his own sisters. It's just that personal.
All right, next up, making a puppet real. Turning simple mechanics into pure cinematic magic. Because look, having a great story is one thing, but the challenge here was enormous. How in the world do you take a puppet, a bunch of rubber and wires, and make an entire audience fall completely in love with it?
Yeah, that was the million-dollar question, right? How did they do it? On one hand, you've got this pile of electronics and mechanics. On the other, you need a character that can show deep, real emotion and build this friendship you can actually believe in. So how'd they bridge that gap? Well, it took a small army of people. A team of 12 puppeteers had to work together in perfect sync just to operate E.T.'s face and body. The sets themselves were built way up high on platforms, just so they could hide the jungle of cables underneath. They even brought in a mime for his delicate hand gestures. And for the scenes where E.T. walks around, they had small actors inside the suit. It was this incredible mix of artistry and high-tech engineering. And you know what? It worked. The effect was immediate, especially on the kids. Drew Barrymore, who was only 6 years old when she played Gertie, she didn't see a puppet. She said she thought he was her guardian angel. She would literally just hang out and talk to him on set like he was completely real.
And that magic wasn't just for the kids. Dee Wallace, who played the mom, said the exact same thing. She never once thought of E.T. as a puppet. To the entire cast, he was just another actor, a living, breathing co-star. And that collective belief is what made the whole thing feel so authentic when you watch it.
So this shared belief in E.T. being real, it created something pretty rare in Hollywood. The set became less like a workplace and more like, well, a family.
You know, the cast talked about how most movie sets can be kind of dysfunctional places, but the E.T. set, totally different story. They said it felt like a family. One person even called it a commune. It was just this warm, supportive place where everyone was on the exact same mission.
And that feeling went all the way to the top. For Spielberg, this movie was life-changing. He later said that working with those kids, Henry, Robert, and Drew, was the first time he ever really felt like a father. That set, it became his first family. Just imagine that.
So you have this amazing family vibe on set. And that was the perfect foundation for how Spielberg wanted to direct this movie, which was all about capturing real, raw, genuine emotion, especially from the kids.
So how did he pull that off? His method was pretty unconventional. First, he shot the entire movie in chronological order. That's super rare in filmmaking, but it meant the actor's friendship with E.T. grew for real, day after day, right along with the story. He also loved to embrace surprise, and he would often talk them through a scene from just off camera to keep the reactions fresh and spontaneous.
Here's a perfect example. Remember that scene where Michael bumps into E.T. and that whole shelf of toys comes crashing down? Yeah, that wasn't in the script. The actor had no idea it was coming, so that look of pure shock on his face, it's 100% real. And that's exactly the kind of magic Spielberg was looking for.
And this whole approach led to those absolutely heartbreaking final scenes. Because they had shot everything in order, the cast had spent months building a genuine love for E.T. So when it came time to film his death scene, the tears and the sadness were completely real. As Spielberg himself put it, it wasn't acting anymore. It was reacting.
Okay, so they made this incredibly personal film inside this little family bubble, but then they had to release it to the world.
And what happened next? Absolutely nobody saw coming.
You have to remember, the studio was really nervous about this film. With a budget of just $10 million, they were worried they just had a small kids' movie on their hands that was going to lose money. Back then, movies for kids just weren't expected to be huge blockbusters. But the film landed in the early 1980s, a pretty turbulent time around the globe, and producer Kathleen Kennedy really nailed why it resonated so deeply with people. Her logic was, look, if a lost alien and a lonely boy can bridge that massive gap and connect, then surely any two people or any two nations on Earth can find a way to do the same.
And that's exactly what happened. The film's message was just universal. The cast would get posters sent to them from Indonesia. They saw versions of themselves speaking Tagalog. The story's core themes, empathy, love, understanding, they just transcended every barrier. Language, culture, politics, none of it mattered.
Can you imagine what that was like for the actors to witness? Henry Thomas, who played Elliot, described seeing the film with an audience for the first time as one of the most amazing moments of his entire life, just feeling that wave of pure emotion pouring out of the theater. Because in the end, E.T. was so much more than just a movie. It was a communal experience. For 2 hours, in theaters all around the world, total strangers sat together in the dark and shared something profound. For a little while, they all became friends.
And that really leaves us with something to think about. The story of E.T. is a powerful reminder about connection, about looking past our differences to find common ground. It makes you wonder, in our own turbulent times, what messages from our most beloved stories do we need to hear again today?